Hello and welcome to the Real Estate Regroup Show. I am your host, LJ Walker, a real estate investor helping you realize your dreams of owning a home or investing in one. Well, today I want to address a post that I saw and I'm going to read it to you. It says, "Ladies, temperature is dropping. Don't cut him a key. Don't let him stay more than 3 nights in a row. And don't let him get mail to your address that's in his name. After that, he's a tenant, so stay woke." Now, a number of people responded to this post. It's gaining popularity. A lot of people are joking about it. And then there are a few people who had questions and they were wondering if this was really true. So guys, I created this I wanted to address this particular situation, all right? So, as I say in most of my videos, different states have different laws. And from what I can see, if a person stays on your property for 7 consecutive nights, that's the shortest of the states, to 30 days, which is the longest, then that's not a guest anymore. That's a tenant. Whether they are staying in your unit where you live, like if you have a 1 family, or if it's a 3 family and there's a tenant and that tenant brings on a guest, if that guest is there between that amount of time, then that guest is no longer a guest. That guest is a tenant. Okay, so that 3-night part for today, that part right there is not correct. And also, another thing that I wanted to point out is this. Most states, in order to be a tenant, you have to be on the lease. So there are some states where they don't care how long a person stays on the property. If they are not on a written lease, then they will always be a guest and never a tenant. So again, check your state laws. And that's another reason why, guys, you should not invite anybody to your house or bring anybody home. As a matter of fact, some people shouldn't even make it to the mailbox. Okay. Next, another thing is this. If you have a guest, even if it's a family member that may have been in trouble, let's say their home burned down or what have you, and they say they want to stay with you, if you collect money from them because they're staying with you, they actually do have tenant rights in many states. Okay? And then the other thing is, the post is right. If a person starts to get mail at your address, that person actually does become a tenant. Okay. Particularly if, you're living in a 1-family home, or they're living in your unit and it's a multifamily unit. If they are getting any mail at your address, they may have tenant rights. Again, it depends on the state, but most states do see that as being a tenant. So what can you do to sort of prevent this or alleviate this? You should have a guest clause in your lease. Okay? Particularly for your tenants. Because your tenants, they're going to invite people. They're going to have people stay over. So you want to say things such as, if your guests break anything, you, the tenant, are responsible for them. Okay? You can also, there are some landlords that charge an extra fee if they start seeing people coming in and staying on the property. If the tenant asks you for a spare key, definitely charge them extra for that spare key. And you might also want to ask them, why do they want a spare key? 9 times out of 10, it's because they have someone who they wish would move in with them and live with them. Now, if you have a good tenant, honestly, I would not stress too much about whether or not they bring a guest, unless that guest is very disruptive. If the guest is not too disruptive, then I would let it go. However, that is if I did not have it in the lease. Okay. But if it is in the lease, I wouldn't let it go. If it's written in the lease, then I would definitely approach my tenant and I would say to them, I notice that you have a certain person here and it's more than a certain number of days, or are you aware it's getting close to a certain amount of days? They need to be on the lease, or they need to sign the lease agreement, or an extra fee needs to be paid. Okay, you have to stress that. The other issue that you need to also be aware of is that there are some people who will go overboard with the amount of guests that they let stay in the home. For example, there are fire laws where it says that if it's a 1-bedroom, you can't have more than 2 people there. They say 2.5, meaning another person and a child, right? But there are some people where I have seen that will have way more than 2 people. And that's a fire hazard, and you can get in trouble, right? So again, I would definitely put that in the lease, and I would definitely enforce that, because the fire marshals are not going to go after the tenant. The fire marshals are going to come after you. So that is definitely something that you should include in your clause in the lease. And that is definitely something that you definitely want to enforce and make your tenant aware of before it becomes too big of a problem. Now, you may say, okay, if the person is a guest, whether it is your guest as a landlord or homeowner, or if it's a guest of the tenant, you could always go to the police. Yes and no. A lot of times police will remove guests, yes. But a lot of times they may be afraid to do so, because there have been times when it wasn't a guest, but it was a tenant, right? So, you may need to have proof, some sort of proof that this person is a guest. So let's say, for example, it's a tenant and the tenant has a guest, right? You want to definitely, this is why it's so important to keep files, keep leases, keep rental agreements, whether they're short-term or long-term. Never throw those away. Put them up properly so that you can find them in case a situation like that occurs. Okay? Otherwise, if you notice that the police are hesitant and they refuse, or you don't have enough proof at that time to remove that particular person, then you may need to file for an ejectment or an eviction, depending on what state and jurisdiction you are in. Okay, so guys, if you want more further information and you're curious, if you have Legal Shield, you can always contact Legal Shield and they will help you with that particular clause in your lease and advise you and guide you. You can also ask them, what is the law for my city and state jurisdiction when it comes to how to handle guests? You can also go to apartments.com/rental-manager/resources/article and then do a search for when does a guest become a tenant. Okay, so in essence, part of this, going back to the original statement that was in the post, part of it is correct, part of it is not correct. But you should definitely be aware, and you should definitely, as they say, stay woke. So my friends, I hope this information that I've shared will help you make smart financial moves. Feel free to pass this along. Remember, each one, reach one, teach one. Bye for now. Until next time, have a good night.